So, Ursula, should we talk about the interpretation channels and all this stuff?
Good idea.
Let's kick off. And as people kind of join, we can then type it in and let them know. So, as in the past sessions, just before we kick off, it's quite important that you're in right interpretation channel, because the session will be, even though it will be given in English and you can understand English, it will be interpreted the session into Spanish simultaneously and also into Chinese. So it's important that, if people ask question in Chinese or Spanish, then it will be interpreted back into English. So it's important that you're in right channel. Otherwise, you won't be able to hear the interpretation from the other languages. So the way to get into the right channel, there is on your bar is a globe icon, and it says interpretation. And what you do, you click on that globe, and then you select the channel, appropriate channel in which you would like to hear this talk in. So if you would like to hear it in English, then click on English. If you want to hear it in Chinese interpretation in Chinese, then you click on Chinese and Spanish. Ursula, would you like to say it in Spanish? And then Jen, if you can say it in Chinese for everybody so they know what to do. Okay, Jen? Afterwards.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Eric. So, muy buenos días y bueno, a todos. Les contamos que, como es tradicional, esta sesión va a ser traducida desde el inglés hacia el español y el chino. La manera que ustedes pueden seleccionar el lenguaje, la interpretación, es seleccionar el icono del globo terráqueo que hay en la barra al inferior de su pantalla, ¿ya? De esta manera van a poder oír toda no solo la presentación, sino que también las preguntas en el idioma que deseen, ¿ya? Por lo tanto, esperamos que ya sea que sean bilingües o trilingües, los alentamos a seleccionar uno de los canales de traducción para que no se pierdan nada. Okay. Y ahora, now Jen will explain the same in Chinese.
好的。我们现在是在中文频道，中文频道由山东工艺美术学院提供。我们的组织方式，山东工艺美术学院的教务处、国际处以及产教融合青岛基地。如果需要加入中文频道的话，只需要在屏幕下方选择中文频道即可。那欢迎各位加入今天的这个会议。
Thank you so much, Jen. Okay, Ursula, can you take us on the journey today, please?
Okay, thank you, Eric. Again, bueno, I'm going to go. I'm going to select my Spanish channel, so the introduction will be in Spanish. Okay. Buenos días, buenas noches y buenas tardes a todos. Muy bienvenidos. Mi nombre es Úrsula Bravo. Soy académica de la Universidad del Desarrollo y editora de la revista Base, Diseño e Innovación. En nombre de la Red Internacional de Alfabetización en Diseño, Design Literacy International Network, les quiero dar la bienvenida a todos, pero especialmente a Mariana Salgado, quien amablemente aceptó nuestra invitación a impartir esta charla número 37. También agradecemos a todos los que hacen posible esta serie de charlas, especialmente a Pia Álvarez de Comunicaciones, a los traductores Jasmine Silva y Liz Jen, y por supuesto a las instituciones que apoyan esta y otras actividades de nuestra red: Oslo Metropolitan University en Noruega, Universidad del Desarrollo en Chile y Shandong University of Art and Design en China. Mariana Salgado, probablemente muchos de ustedes la conocen, es una figura, podríamos decir, prominente en el ámbito del diseño social y la innovación para el cambio social. Su trabajo combina diseño, investigación y comunicación para abordar problemáticas globales desde una perspectiva colaborativa e inclusiva. Mariana se formó como diseñadora en la Universidad de Buenos Aires, donde desarrolló un interés por el diseño como herramienta de transformación social. Su curiosidad académica y profesional la llevó a Finlandia, donde realizó un doctorado en arte y diseño en la Universidad de Helsinki. En Finlandia, Mariana se integró al sector público y académico, contribuyendo al diseño de servicios e iniciativas para promover la equidad. Su experiencia incluye trabajos con organizaciones públicas y ONG, donde aplica metodologías participativas para incluir las perspectivas de comunidades marginales como migrantes y refugiados. Mariana creó Diseño y Diáspora, un podcast que se ha convertido en una plataforma clave para reflexionar sobre el impacto del diseño en la sociedad. Como diseñadora en la diáspora, ha utilizado su propia experiencia para abogar por un mundo inclusivo que reconozca las múltiples realidades de las comunidades en todo el mundo. Su legado está en su capacidad para inspirar a otros a ver el diseño no solo como una herramienta estética, sino como un medio para transformar las vidas. Tuve el honor de participar en uno de sus episodios del podcast junto a Jorge Frascara y más tarde el placer de conocer personalmente a Mariana cuando a fines del año pasado vino durante un viaje a Santiago, tuvo la generosidad de dar una charla a nuestros alumnos de maestría. Hoy tenemos el privilegio de tenerla en nuestro ciclo Engage with Ideas. Así que bueno, bienvenida Mariana, muchas gracias por aceptar nuestra invitación. La pantalla es tuya.
Thank you a lot for this invitation. I will share my screen. Hopefully it will work. And for the nice presentation. So I'm going to talk about shaping policies and transforming public services from a design service approach. And I will do a little bit of reminding of what I have been working and where I am now. I am a practitioner working full-time as a service designer in the public sector. Actually, at the moment, I work for ICOS. The Integrated Carbon Observation System is one of the research infrastructures that is for the whole Europe, and we measure carbon dioxide. As part of the work that I do, I'm one of the coordinators of the network of designers working for the public sector in Finland, and also part of the designers for the environment. These are the communities that I belong. In parallel, as Ursula has mentioned, I do the podcast Diseño y Diáspora, and I have published at the moment 600, nearly 600 or more episodes, I think more, and also 4 books that are compilations of interviews of different topics. And all this material is for free and online. And we can talk more about the podcast later. But now we are going to delve into, first I'm going to present a paper I wrote together with Tamami Komatsu, and I'm going to tell about this case, this Inland Design, a design and innovation lab that was part of the Finnish Immigration Service and the Ministry of the Interior from 2017 to 2023. So I'm going to start with the paper. It's going to be a little bit dense, and then I'm going to tell what happens after the paper. So what happens in the work we have done for the Ministry of the Interior. And I make you a reminder that this is past work, but I'm looking forward for the discussion about this. So the policy labs, they always have a lot of challenges in the public sector, but most of them, they bring the value of design to the organizations. So a lot of these policy innovation design labs, they have different names, but they all bring an excuse to bring design, and in a lot of them, they have hired designers. This is the case of Inland Design, that we were at the beginning 2 designers, and at some moment 5 of us. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of what we did. So Inland was a safe space for innovation, so we didn't have to do like the daily routines of working, but we have a space for creating new concepts. So one of the things that I have created is a service design ambassador network. So it was a course of a year in which everybody in the Finnish immigration service, they could come to learn about service design and develop those services. So it was like a big investment for the organization because there were people coming from all around Finland during 1 year to develop and learn more about services. And 35 public servants were part of this, the Service Design Ambassador Network. And we also produced certain tangible artifacts, like we help to renovate the website. We have posters, design props, templates, and especially like a client service chatbot. And that was especially important for us, this chatbot, because at the beginning, when we entered the organization, the Finnish service, the Finnish immigration service was only answering 24% of the incoming calls when immigrants were calling, asking for the residence permit, for example. And when we left, there was a lot of different small interventions, but the chat was the biggest one. When we left, we could answer 74% of the incoming calls. That means that people, they didn't have to wait, and most of the incoming calls were answered. So most of the immigrants calling for understanding what happens with their residence permit, for example, they get a reply. And we also were designing intangible artifacts, such as, for example, facilitating, consulting, and open new design space within the organization. So the co-design process emerged as a way for the actors to redefine their roles and empower agency in different forms. No? And users gained a voice and did frontline, the same as frontline staff. No? So we were a lot testing, for example, these new proposals like the chatbot with end users in different moments of the process. It was this co-design process together with them. And also we were involving the staff because we wanted the staff to feel that the chat was a companion and not be against. You know, when we introduced new agencies as an artificial intelligence agent, as a chatbot, it might be some friction. So for us, it was very important, this process of co-designing together. So through the use of human-centered design tools, approaches, and methods, and co-design, the lab created communities of practices around specific issues, forming alternative to certain given problems. Now, I mentioned here one, but just to be consistent, for example, to continue with the example of the chatbot, we created a community and we created a team to who we could give the project. So we created the concept. We started to work on the first guidelines and how it should work, and then it was a team that took it, and it was a whole community that embraced that the development of the chatbot, and is still on and is in 3 languages, and you can access to that from their website. As an internal design expert that we had a positive environment, but it also came with some challenges. For example, the nature of the work that Inland, so Inland was our design and innovation lab, was invited to do was mostly service-oriented, right? Was in the implementation of certain policies and rarely touch upon strategy, where co-creation processes would be quite impactful. This is what we said in this paper. So the impact of design can be lost in diverging efforts spent in singular episodes of service innovation because it was a new unit. We wanted to justify ourselves. We wanted to say, hey, this is why we are here. This is what design can do. So we were kind of lost in a lot of different actions there. And we tried to enter into this strategic level, but it was not still matured the organization towards that. So we have seen design help to build this capacity through two measures. So setting the context for a new organizational culture. And this has happened especially with the creation of this network of design ambassadors. Because you imagine that 35 public servants all around the organization also help in different units, help to this new organizational culture to develop its usability through capacity building. No, this is part of what we see. In this way, design has the potential of transforming public sector organizations implicitly through practice and the creation of environments and contexts that allowed for situated design cultures to develop. And this is what we conclude in this paper. And now the story continues, and I'm going to go out of the paper that we wrote at that moment and tell you how Inland continued. Well, we went out of the Finnish Innovation Service, and Inland goes to the Ministry of the Interior. What changed? What is the role of a service design in the ministry? And this is what we needed to find out ourselves, right? In the Finnish Immigration Service, we were part of the digital service unit. So we were operative, we were implementing things, we were in the implementation of the public policies, right? And also, the bosses were super committed to have an innovation and an innovation lab, and they were committed to give us the time and the space to offer and to initiate new things. So there was a very proactive approach from our own supervisors, which is very important, no? To have this support in this when you start a new unit, and especially a new unit that brings a new organizational culture. In the Ministry of the Interior, our work was much strategic. At the beginning, we work in the strategic unit, so we could help, for example, with the strategy of the whole organization. But also, we collaborate in transdisciplinary team from the creation of new laws and policies. But we always needed to justify our work, because it was completely new that in the level of the ministries, in the level of the creation of new laws, there is a service designer. And we have to understand what is a service designer in that context. So, as I said, in the Finnish Immigration Service, we execute that, okay, we knew we have to serve clients better, for example. This is part of, and that we have to serve clients in the public sector. We cannot choose who to serve. We have to serve everybody under the same basis. And in the Ministry of the Interior, we were in the creation of new laws and policies. So the type of role was very different. In the public sector in Finland, we have 500 designers and design enthusiasts. It's this network of government design that we gather together once a week, and we have done this for 7 years. And we have recently, for example, last year one international conference on design. And most of these designers are working in the execution of public policies. They are working in once it's written, what we needed. And at that moment, we were only 2 designers working in the State Council. That means in the level of ministries. So When we talk about services in Finland, there is a lot of talk about the service design, and this is why we applied as service designers. But in fact, we are not designing services. We have been designing policies, processes, strategies, or collaborations. So I have been talking about public policies, but I have not said what is a public policy. And a public policy is a course or plan of action adopted by the government, a party, an organization, no? For example, and this is the definition of OECD. In my work in the ministry, for example, I participated in the decision-making paper on internal security, an action plan for people in irregular situation, the strategy for Finns in the diaspora, Finnish citizens in the diaspora, Finland's comprehensive migration policy, and the Alien Act, which is the pre-study of the coming immigration law. And I'm going to talk about exactly this because my participation in the preliminary study that we did to reform the immigration law, which is called in English Aliens Act. So as you might know, it's kind of interesting that it's called Aliens Act. But the participation took many different ways, and I added here a slide which is in Finnish, so you understand that most of the work has been done actually in Finnish, but we have different ways of making citizens and different NGOs, religious groups, companies, cities, researchers, and public servants be part of all this. So at the beginning, we have an online questionnaire, and what happens? Always, when you put an online questionnaire, there are certain people that are used to reply to governmental requests for policies. So they are like the usual suspects. They are the ones that they are replying. Then we have, for example, technology development discussion only with public servants, residence permit workshop, in immigration seminar, with public servants, with the NGOs and the researchers. And we have different type of workshops on different topics that needed a special group. But the ones that for me have been the most significant are these last ones, the immigration dialogues. And I'm going to go deep into that so you understand why these dialogues, they were so special. And that was one way of preparing for this new immigration law. So the immigration dialogues, it was a pilot that we coordinated with a colleague from the Ministry of the Interior, but it was a project with 7 different ministries and 2 public agencies. And these immigration dialogues were a pilot for national dialogues. And in Finland, every year, there is a group of NGOs and public sector persons, plus companies that decide what are going to be the dialogues about. And in this case, we wanted to try how it is to make these national dialogues as a way to feed into the immigration policy. And one of our main concerns was that, can we talk about immigration in a constructive way? Why? Because in the media in Finland, when you talk about migration, most of the time it's about, yes, we want immigrants, no, we don't want immigrants. And most of the time it's about refugees. While most of the immigrants come to Finland, as I came. By the way, I don't know if I say it. I am Argentinian and I have been living here 25 years. So for me, it's close to my heart, this issue of the immigration policies. And most of us, we come here because of love or studies or work. So we thought that we really wanted to have an immigration dialogues that go beyond what it was done in the media, that was sometimes is not a constructive dialogue about that. So we wanted to increase the understanding between people, broaden the debate of immigration, and promote integration and inclusion. Because when we first consulted, for example, with the online questionnaire to citizens about the coming immigration law, only a few of them were immigrants, and most of them, they were not. And we wanted to include the voices of immigrants in order to create the immigration law. So these immigration dialogues have the characteristic that the different actors were going to organize this dialogue. So what does it mean? That we from the ministry, we did not organize this dialogue, but we trained people to organize their own dialogues, and then they could have themselves and choose what is their own research question, or what they wanted to discuss in these dialogues. So they wanted to discuss the challenges and opportunities of immigration, how is to move to Finland, how the immigration changed the day life of a person, how can we support participation. So they themselves choose the topic. And we give trainings and we give materials in order to support that they do their own dialogues. And then they document all that. And here you can see the results. Remember that we are talking about Finland. We have 5 million persons. So these numbers are very big. So we have nearly 700 participants in 72 discussions. And these discussions, they were held in 11 different languages. So participants were from 8 to 80 years old. And the most important is that 83 of the discussion included participants who had not previously participated in a similar discussion. And this is very important. Do you remember when I told you that in some cases when we consult, we always get the answer of the usual suspect? When in this case, we went beyond that because participants could, for example, participate in Arabic, Farsi, Russian, Estonian. So that has been super good. And 90% of the organizers felt that there was a need for the immigration dialogue. So that was super important. Then we hired 2 researchers that compile of this data. We received a lot of these 72 discussions. They were recorded to the letter. We have used something that is very important to say in this project is that we have used time-out dialogues, which is the method, and there is a foundation here in Finland that have trained a lot of people for creating these dialogues. For example, people in museums, people in libraries, people in the private in the public sector, in different organizations, they already have received this training. So that means that when we put a topic, immigration dialogues, then they can join because they understand how to facilitate these dialogues. And this is very important, that we stepped on the shoulders of the infrastructure that had already the country, right? And we create these dialogues in this using these time-out dialogues. You can search in internet, you will have. And I'm not going to go deep into this, but I wanted to show you what are the type. This is a very different report as other reports that we create in or we outsource or we asked in the ministry, because it has a lot of qualitative data and the type of and we have a lot of these kind of quotations coming from people, no? Like being an undocumented immigrant was the worst time in my life, for example. Sorry, I have some typos. I don't know what happened today. I passed by, a passerby hit me on the shoulder and spit to me and said, "Get out of Finland." So you really can grasp the type of materials that we had. And we also work together with people of the different ministries in order that the replies and the analysis could also serve for the other ministries to better understand issues on migration, right? Because it's not only the Ministry of the Interior, but the Ministry of Education and Culture, the Ministry of Employment. There is many others that could benefit of the materials that were collected and analyzed. So this we have compiled it and produced a report, and this is in English and in Finnish, which was the result of these immigration dialogues. I wanted to get deep into one issue, because then we can go for the big picture, but I wanted you to understand what kind of work we were doing as designers in that context. So how design can play a pivotal role in creating a more inclusive, a citizen-centered approach to shaping immigration policy. That was for me the main question. And this is, for example, how it is structured, the participation in the process of creating a law or a policy. And we have different actors that comes in different parts of the project, right? Until we make a legislative proposal. And there is insights, and then we inform about this process. So our contribution as designer was expanding the collaborations, right? And you can see that we in the ministry, they have always and traditionally worked very close to the NGOs in Finland, which are that are experts in the field. We also work a lot with other public organizations, and we work a lot with the private sector. But what we brought as designers is more bringing design from the universities, because we have made a lot of collaborations with projects from the university courses and also master thesis students. We brought new methods, tools. We brought a participation plan, which means that we don't think in participation as different touch points in different moments, but we have a consistent and coherent plan that could influence at the end. And we brought more contact with the immigrants, no? The ones that are going to be affected by the law or the policy. We also provide visual tools for thoughts. So we have a project set up, and then we have a lot of collaborative tools such as Mural, Miro, these type of things. And then we have analytical tools such as customer journeys, blueprints that help us to understand where are the bottlenecks, where are the different problems. And then before the final document, there is also a visual designer. So all these visual tools made for the communication within colleagues. They supported a good communication, but also they brought not hierarchical practices, because a lot of the work that we do puts everybody, all the actors in the same category. And in a ministry such as the Ministry of the Interior, in where a lot of my colleagues were coming from, for example, from the firework unit, from the police unit, from different sectors that are traditionally more hierarchical, then this was especially useful. So, what we could change in that concept. We introduce novel work and methodologies. We promote a more equitable team dynamics with reduced hierarchies, as I just said, and we enhance participation by integrating it more coherently into the project. No, participation was thought from the beginning in a consistent way. We utilize qualitative research for informed decision-making. So we understood that all these, for example, type of work, such as the dialogues, they bring a lot of qualitative data that we needed also to argument for the use of that and how this could inform the policies. We incorporate qualitative research as part of the government officials' responsibility, because a lot of the research sometimes is outsourced to others, this is a key point, that there is a certain empathy that comes from the fact that you are working and gathering this material, and you are not only outsourcing research. And we broadened the role of what research could bring to lawmaking. We strengthened the collaboration with the stakeholders, because we were also a resource to create more engagement with different stakeholders, expand our understanding of stakeholder groups, and enhance our collaborative network, our network of collaboration. So in that way, we embrace more human perspectives in the design, in the process of making policies. What we cannot change is, like, at the moment, in 2003, when I left the ministry, there was a new government program, and the government program have changed completely the immigration politics, and there is a lot of the immigration politics in which they already is written in the government program, so you cannot ask the citizens what they want if it is already written there. And the immigration politics at the moment are not very in favor of migration, which is against all the recommendations from population researchers, for example, that believe that we should have an open Finland and we should embrace immigration. But we have at the moment a very closed immigration politics. So participation comes with the promise. So if the decision for the upcoming law change is already made, asking people to join, it becomes pointless. So it has to be meaningful. What are you inviting to do? And you have to be able to work with this promise, so to make something if you are asking people to participate. So it's not participation for the sake of participation, but it's for informing the process of the creation of the new policy. Designing participation changes on our willingness to listen, no? This is the same as I have said it in better words, probably. As time progresses, our capacity to listen also expand, because we learned how to listen. And how do our colleagues perceive citizen participation, especially those who've spent years working with the same legal framework without much exposure to citizen input? And this is something that is very difficult to change, because sometimes with a person have been working with the same law or the same policy in the same framework during years is not eager or not very motivated to come up with new ways of doing things, with new ideas of what of how do we go around and consult people, and for what. So distinguishing working methodologies across our different disciplines, and this is a place of friction, right? Because I am a designer, and in my education, I had a lot of group work. I have been deciding by consensus. I have been challenging. We put a certain design in the table, and then we criticize that. And this is how we evolve our design. But in other areas, the way of working is quite different. For example, one of my colleagues, I was telling him, why don't we sit down and we develop this together? And then he told me, hey, I go to my cave, I write you an A4, and you and afterwards you comment on that. Yes, no more workshops, no more collaborative ideas, no more group work around this. So some people because of their own training, they are not used to just put things on the table and discuss and criticize them. It's not the way of thinking, and we have to respect and align with that. It's part of what, I mean, if we want to bring new ways of working, we also have to understand how other things and respect other modalities. So strategic designers at the ministerial level are not on permanent contract. This is something that the organizations are not having this maturity that had us as permanent. So things change, and then we left the ministry because our contracts were not permanent, and the new immigration policies could not allow for all this work on participatory practices that could inform that specific area. So trust is a mutual dynamics, and we have to work on that on long time. So I have been 3.5 years working for the ministry, and I think it was already like a success that I could work within the creation of a new law, within this preliminary study for the new law. But I could have needed much more time in order to be able to influence the complexion of that law, because, for example, a law creation might take 6 years, the whole renovation of one single law. So design, particularly when applied to policymakers, has the potential to enrich our democracies, and I believe that. And it serves to engage citizens and organizations, granting them voices within the realm of governmental decision-making. And with that, I stop. Or I am looking forward.
Wow. Thank you so
discussing.
much. Thank you so much, Mariana. We already have a
Yeah.
You are right on time. We already have a few questions.
Perfect.
And I would like to invite people to ask those questions. But we start with Lavanya. I'm not sure if I have pronounced the name correctly, but Lavanya would like to ask about a follow-up question on your presentation. Lavanya, would you like to come in, please? I hope she
Yes, hi.
Go. Yeah, go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, awesome. This was such a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, first of all, for hosting this talk. I wanted to find out if service blueprints or any other tangible artifacts were created to document the design process and any decisions you took throughout the design process.
We use something that could be considered a service blueprint. And actually, we put a lot of effort of showing how the insights coming from the different workshop could fit into the law. So yes, we did a chart in which we say, okay, this is what we found, like a table, like very, that it was like a blueprint, but it's not, let's consider that this is not a service, right? Which means, so we put like, okay, this is what we find out. This is how it's written in the law now. This is how it could be written in the future. This is how we thought like this could be written. And imagine that, well, we have done this with 2 Finnish lawyers, one that was doing like a trainee in the ministry, and another that was a PhD researcher. So it was part of the university collaboration that I started there in the ministry. And what is different when you, for example, as a UX designer, you understand how the software is built. So you have more agency about that. But I did not have a lot of agency in the final product, which is a law. Why? Because I'm not a lawyer. So I have never written law myself. And also because my Finnish writing is super bad. So imagine, so it's very different to work as designer in the process, but not have a lot of agency in the end result, and then work in something in which you know what it could be done. So I set up a team in order to, for example, make this type of what I consider the blueprint of what were the things that could be changed according to the materials that we got from this workshop. Hopefully I answered.
Oh, thank you so much. I would really enjoy looking at it. And I think it's really interesting to see how different designers document this decision-making process itself, because that is what really gets the ball moving and kind of influences next steps and other stakeholders throughout this process. So I would be really happy to look through any materials that you can share. And if we still do have time, could I ask another question?
Of course, go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you so much. I am currently working on a research paper, and it is sort of focused on the use of service blueprints within the policy design process. I've mostly been looking within the ASIAN Digital Library, and there aren't as many examples for me to like peruse there. So I was wondering if Maria could share any recommended reading for me where service blueprints have really been used for creating or assessing public policy.
I'm not sure. I think about when we are talking about public policy and public innovation in general, I think one of the most relevant writer is Christian Bason. So he had 2 books that for us have been important, but I am not sure if in there you can have a blueprint. But I think that anyway, if you are talking about public service innovation, I would recommend to read his books.
Thank you so much. My
And
final
I
question.
write in the chat for you the name.
Oh, yes. That is exactly what I was going to ask. Thank you so much.
Brilliant, very good. Okay, we go to Annika. Annika, you have 2 questions. They're kind of interrelated. Would you like to come in, please? Annika?
Yes. Hello. I was thinking about how, in the Latin context, how can we get into this design about policy, like in Mexico and this kind of countries, like is there are a lot of people, a lot of interest. So, what do you suggest?
I am not sure if I understood the question, but are you asking me how do I enter to work in the creation of public policies, how I started? And I have to say, I'm going to tell you something very funny, that when I entered into the Ministry of the Interior, me and my colleague, we did a presentation. This is service design. This is how you can use us. This type of services we have done in the Finnish Immigration Service. This is how services are conceived. This type of things you can ask us. And then we wanted to work together with the lawmakers, right? We wanted to, and nobody wanted us. So we explicitly went to them, and nobody wanted to collaborate with us. Nobody actually understood probably what we have said. And then what happened is that someone asked me to participate in a project in which we consult a group of NGOs. And then I created a method for consultation, some templates, and then they could, I trained some of them to use these templates, and then we collect a lot of data and analyzed and visualized all that. And then this person was so happy to collaborate with me that then she told to the lawmakers, hey, I don't know what Mariana is doing, but take her. So at the end, sometimes it's a question of getting inside the organization and navigating and trying to understand where you can be more useful and where they can better benefit of your work. But it was a lot of internal work in order to arrive to do the work I was most interested. And I'm going to send you now in the chat the link to my podcast, to the episodes on public policies. They are mostly in Spanish, but you can find some in English, because I think that might be a good way to see other designers in other parts of the world doing similar type of work. So I will give you the link.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, someone else wants to. I can listen and search for this.
Just let's type it first, and then we'll move on. What I was going to say is that there's also quite lots of if you are interested in documentation, which is quite hard to actually get generally from designers, these blueprints and so on. But on UK government service design, there was quite lots of pictures and images and also some suggestions how they do service design. I can search for it and see if there's any link there. But we go now to Ursula. You had a question. Ursula, come in. Hello.
Perdón, ahora sí, gracias. Gracias, Jasmine. Mi pregunta para Mariana tiene que ver con entender un poco mejor el rol de los diseñadores en estos procesos participativos y qué los diferencia, por ejemplo, de otros profesionales como los antropólogos, los sociólogos o incluso los psicólogos sociales. ¿Cuál sería como la diferencia, el aporte específico de los diseñadores en estos procesos participativos orientados a las políticas públicas?
Thank you. This is a great question. The thing is that anthropologists and sociologists, they are already working in most of the governmental level. So we have a lot to understand in what is exactly the contribution of design. And when we analyze and we collect qualitative data, we are all the time trying to understand what is the next step, what we could create. So our field is in the argumentation on how to use these materials that were coming from these workshops, that in many workshops, interviews, sessions, seminars, that in many cases are produced and defined together with people from other disciplines, how to make them actionable. And in some cases, for making them actionable, we have a lot of different tools, like these tools I was mentioning, tools for thought. Sometimes they are visualizations, and sometimes they might not be visualizations, but they might be also a way to analyze these and get into some actionable strategies that need to be, or some actionable steps for what is going to be the design of the next policy, for example. I hope I've been clear.
Sí, muchas gracias, Mariana.
All right, we'll be winding up shortly. But any questions, Brigitte? Would you like to come in? You have to unmute yourself, Brigitte. Good to see you here, Brigitte. You need to click the unmute button, Brigitte. I wish I can do it for you. It's on your phone.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Here we go. Amazing. Go.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to see you all. I think it's a really interesting subject, and thank you, Mariana. That was very interesting examples. It's just that I just happened to be nominated with my last book, co-designed with Hervé Collignon, which is called Strategic Design for a Responsible Future. We are nominated for the New France Design Impact Award, because France is starting a new, again, some kind of design award. And I was thinking that we did not have so much examples in the public world. So you really have given me examples which I think we could include in the next version, in a way, of the book. But the Designos cube is kind of working very well. So I would love to maybe have a discussion on how we can use maybe my model in the public service in a way, and see if we can have some common ground on what we mean for strategic design and strategic design value.
Yes, I guess this is not a discussion that will happen in this context, right? Because I need to get deep into your model. And yes, so, and also is something that it could be interesting for the network of designers working in the public context in Finland. So it might be that it's not only me, but yes, feel free to send me your materials and we can talk about that.
Yeah. So I will be in touch, dear. Yes. And I thank you very much. I think you are really pioneers. And just to tell me, it's kind of emotional for me, because this June is the 40th anniversary of my PhD, and I am turning 80. You see what I mean?
It's very, very I would not guess that, Bridget.
Yeah, well, that's the fact. And I'm really working about what can I do, beyond the books, and something in terms of having trans-generation discussion. So I
have to interview you for my podcast, Brigitte.
Absolutely, that's what we need to happen. And also we need to bring you here. And I would suggest, Brigitte, that your earlier book about management, I think it would be good to look at it and look at the skills in terms of what those skills.
Well, I don't know what can happen, but because I was, traveling all over France and saying to young designers, this is it. This is why I've done it. This is why I've been, coming from management science, working on design science. And from this discussion with all the young people and young colleagues, it seems that what I've done over the years, in 40 years, will need some kind of service design there, and working on the interface of my work, because, people don't have time to go into libraries and read books, and especially we need so much designer skills now, because we need to redesign the world. So yes, I'm really thinking of making some kind, I don't know, of a small team working on how my work could be useful for the next generation, and find some kind of simple design tool to do that.
So just for everyone, I have just posted there's a cover page of Bridget's book, Design a Business Case. That's one of your books, yeah, Bridget?
Yes, but that was really a discussion with a consultant about why is it that, people are not thinking of design in a strategic way. And we were, trying to have a discussion. But what I was thinking, dear, because we have known each other so many years, was really the book Design Management, the reference book in 2002, that has been translated in 10 languages. and really customized and that was really a reference book. And people in France now are asking me, we need an update, 20 years later, because the framework is still valid. But of course the work has changed so much. And
thank you a lot, Brigitte, for your comments. I could take more questions from others now, if you don't mind, because it would be nice to give the stage to others.
So I'm not sure, Jed, do you have a question? If not, then Jed?
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, I'm actually working on a similar thing to you, Design for Justice, but I have two big challenges. One of them is, how do you convince lawmakers to look your way? And I think this is kind of a common question that you get when you're a designer working with government, and they don't see the value of design. That's number one. And how do we actually convince them? And I have another problem is finding end users to interview. Because what I'm doing is more to do with design for a child-friendly justice system. So you have to deal with parents with trauma. So we can't get I'm not saying we cannot get, but it's so rare that someone will let us in to interview. So my question is, how do you overcome things like that? Maybe it's a bit far-fetched, but I just want to hear what you think.
Thank you, Chet. Great questions. So about the convincing, I think you convince by doing good work together. So involving others in setting the questions, involving others in doing the work from the beginning together. Because if you don't involve the other from the beginning, they might feel that they are doing a favor, but if they appropriate your project, then if they appropriate and they think together with you, then they might be more committed. And I could also say that something that it has been very helpful for us in Finland is that bring other people to show. So for example, I was in the Ministry of the Interior, and there was some fantastic work in Estonia in the Ministry of the Interior where they did experiments. And I wanted to say, hey, as a designer, I could also do experiments. So then I brought them, they tell about the experiment, and I tell them, I need you to say this, and this. And they say it, and because it's another country, it's Estonia, and I put them in the stage, then I can go to my superior and say, these are the designers, and this is the type of work I can do. So it has, and we have done a lot, this stepping on the shoulders of others. So I have been invited many times by others in the public sector to say exactly the same as they say, my colleagues, but with other words. And because we have done it in the Ministry of the Interior, then there is a certain legitimization because others have already tried and do it and had successful results, and we are there. You know what I mean? So it has been very good for us to arrange this type of small seminars or presentations in which other designers come to speak about this. This could be my answer in relation to that. Convince by doing and by bringing your colleagues and giving them the script of what you need to say, because this is what you want to move forward in your own organization.
So the interesting thing is they want us to work with them, but they tell us like, oh, you should help us design posters, but not doing design research. Like we come in so we can identify opportunities. But they think in their minds like, oh, you're a designer, so you can design the poster, you can design the room, rather than doing design research. So that is
in the design community, there's a lot of solidarity. So whenever you say to someone else that I mean, it can be whoever that had a good case in which design research has been super meaningful. So you could bring them and they will be super happy to, you know, give an online talk to Thailand to tell about their work, because we
So
actually
you
don't
have to come to
collaborate as
Thailand
much
and
as we could.
you have to come to Thailand and tell them yourself.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
it.
I'm super happy.
Jet-
I will
Jet-
be too.
yeah.
And then I wanted to comment on the finding end users, because I think something in this type of work that relates to the you know, there is a framework which is called trauma-based design, right?
Yep.
So in this type of work, the social workers are key, or the health workers. So you cannot work without having them as your companions. I think there is certain design actions that cannot be done without the people that are in the territory on daily basis, and that we shouldn't, because they are the one that are sustaining this relationship over time. And you might not have this possibility, because you might have this project and then in 2 months another one. So you need to have them as design partners. That would be my and also another thing that for us has been all super important is the where do you organize something, because for example in the case of we are going to interview immigrants in irregular situation, we cannot invite them to the ministry. So there is certain things that have to be done in their own context, in their own territories. So a lot about this, how you set up this encounter is very important. No, are you inviting them to eat together and prepare food together in order to have an informal conversation in their place, and you are bringing the food? You know, like it's a question. A lot is a question about how to invite, and most of the time our places inside the public sector are not the best ones. So we, for example, have been exploring a lot the working in the libraries, because it's like a neutral place. It's a place of the citizens, at least in Finland. So I don't know what you have in Thailand, but it might be cultural centers or, you know, community centers. But definitely sometimes not inviting to the ministry office where people put high heels and a tie, because we don't want people with high heels and a tie. You know, we don't want to stress people, because we need to talk to them and we need to co-design. And yeah, so
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Jed, like the question you had at the beginning, you know, the illustration you gave, that you expected to design posters rather than, you know, strategy and so on. That's a long, you know, history of designers, you know, been facing long time ago, before service design. And suggestion is that you actually educate and companies and government about design and so on. And that comes a question then to Mariana. Okay. And these are the last questions that we can wrap up. And the question is this. You spoke a lot about the designers, the design, and the change they brought about, you know, in the department, and, you know, they brought about, you know, influencing policy and so on. But my question is about what would make it easier, you know, not easier kind of for designers to work in government or other organizations, but more about what sort of kind of top skills everyone should have in order to be in skills around design, generic design, so they are able to participate. They can do co-designing. They can understand the blueprints. They can understand the strategy. They can understand what can be done. So it's kind of like my question to you, Mariana, is about, from your experience, you know, for the past, your work, you know, with working with people who are non-designers, what sort of skills you would, you know, ideally they should have, not become designers, but to be able to work better with designers, to be able to implement, you know, those sort of suggestion skills and so on in a more core production.
I wonder first, thank you, Eric. I wonder if it is a skill or is an attitude, right? And is to have like an open attitude towards changing your own practices, towards trying something different, right? I mean, in many laws, it's stated that we have to consult citizens, right? We have to consult citizens when we create a new building. But for many years, the architects consult the citizens and then click, they didn't use that material because they didn't know how to, they didn't understood that the materials of these consultations are the meat for their coming urban planning. So there was a lot about this translation that was lost. So they have to believe that from that work that we do, they are going to enrich their work. They have to see with their own eyes. They have to participate in these processes themselves, because sometimes if you only say it, it's just not enough, because it goes against their own working practices. So in order to change this attitude, you also need this trust and this common time of working together. And something that it came to my mind when you asked that is that, well, a lot of my talk was about the role of the design in the public sector. And something that I wanted to say is that in parallel of highlighting the role of design, because I do believe we have a role there, I am completely against of measuring the impact of design. Why? Because most of the time we work in transdisciplinary teams. So it's super difficult to take the role of design and separate from everything that happens around. So a lot, as you say, Eric, a lot depends on the capabilities and the attitudes of the rest of the team to embrace design and to embrace new practices. So it can never be measured in separate of the whole, how much support do you have from the leaders of the organization, how permeate are the practices of your colleagues, and a lot of things that have nothing to do with design itself, right? How can you argument as a designer, and what a legitimate voice do you have? I have a legitimate voice in many sense because I am I have a doctoral degree from Finland, but at the same time I am a woman and I don't speak extremely correct Finnish. So there is things that argument and support my argument, and there are things also that comes against me, because if the same type of new practices were suggested from a Finnish male of a certain age with the same degrees, would be different, would be completely differently taken. So it's a lot about the attitudes and the listening training of the ones that are working with you, and how open they are for suggestions from people that are not in the most privileged groups in this society.
You have summarized it very well. And Daniel will take us out of the session. It's the last question. Daniel, would you like to come in, please? We can't hear you, Daniel. Yeah, okay, good.
Daniel, no te escuchamos.
I don't know if it is the translation. We should
Ahora
listen
sí,
the
ahora sí.
translation,
Ya
right?
activé el micrófono. En español, Mariana, para hacerlo más rápido.
Dale.
La pregunta es sobre todo tu trabajo que presentaste, todos estos procesos y estos proyectos vinculados a la esfera pública y a la creación de políticas públicas. Quería preguntarte cómo contribuye a crear narrativas de innovación social. ¿Cómo crees que, desde tu perspectiva, que tu trabajo y todos estos proyectos aportan a narrativas de innovación social?
I don't know. I think I have made a good narrative. And I have to say that with the innovation as in general, as a framework, I have a problem because I think most of the work of designers implies innovation, right? We are always there for the change. We are always there when a new policy is coming, a new strategy is coming. So, and we normally also go about changing the way in which we want to create and in which we want to advance. So I think design is always very much interweaved in innovation processes, and as a designer, I cannot see it in a different way. But of course, I'm not an expert in innovation, so it might be that some others can better answer this question.
Thank you, Danielle, for a really good question, and thank you, utilizing the service of the translator from Spanish to English, which was, worked very well. Mariana, thank you very much for very dynamic talk and for, being so open to cover many different questions. So thank you for joining us today. And thank you everybody else joining us also and having a good conversations with Mariana. And thank you to Ursula for setting it up. There's lots of work about behind the scenes with setting up the Zoom and the mailings, and with Pia, doing the all this stuff. And lastly and not least, thank you to the interpreters, who done amazing job. So Liz and Yasmin, thank you so much for your interpretation. And whenever you are, good morning to you, good afternoon, or good night. And we'll see you next month. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Muchas gracias Mariana por esta estupenda presentación y también por tenernos tan como interesados en estos temas y por lograr generar conversaciones entre todos los asistentes. Un abrazo y espero que nos veamos pronto.